Таны төлөө эх орн чинь юу хийж чадах вэ гэж асуухаас өмнө та өөрөө эх орныхон төлөө юу хийж чадах вэ гэж асуу. Young Federal Family.
Ноён Роберт Рейд нь мянганы сорилтын корпорацийн Монгол дахь сүүрэн төлөөлөгчийн үүрэгт ажиллаа 2008 оны 1-р сарын 22-ны өдрөөс эхэлсэн бөгөөд энэ нь түүний 30-аас дээш жил засгийн газар болон төрийн бус байгууллагад ажилласан ажлын туршлагын үргэлжлэл юм. Энэхүү албан тушаалын өмнө тэрээр Тампа, Флорида дахь Макдилийн тусгай ажиллагааны командын хөгжлийн аглах зөвлөхийн үүрэгт ажлыг хийж байсан болно. Олон улсын хэмжээнд үйл ажиллагааг удирдах зөвлөх ажлынхаа хүрээнд үйл ажиллагааны идэвхтэй байдлыг хөгжүүлж, зардлыг бууруулах олон талт туршлагатай бөгөөд Мишиганы их сургуулиас бакалавр, Тендербордын их сургуулиас олон улсын удирдлагын магистрийн зэргийг тус горилсон байна. Инх тайвны корпусын Европ, Дундад Азийн бүсийг хариуцсан захирлын үүрэгт ажлыг гүйцэтгэж байх үедээ Вашингтон болон Марокко, Монгол, Филиппин зэрэг 21 оронд тэдгээрийн агентлагийн болон бүсийн бодлогыг хөгжүүлэх ажлыг 2000 ажилтан болон бусад сайн дурын ажилтнуудын хамтаар гүйцэтгэж байжээ. Тэрээр Вашингтонд ирэхэн өмнө ноён Рейд Босни Герцеговина дахь инх тайвны корпус, Узбекистан болон Ямайкад инх тайвны корпусын сүүрэн төлөөлөгчөөр, Доминиканы бүгд найрамдах улсад төлөвлөгөө, сургалт хариуцсан болон захиргааны ажилтан, инх тайвны корпусын сайн дурын хөгжлийн мэргэжилтэн, Тувалууд сургалтын захирал, Фижид төслийн удирдагч, инх тайвны корпусын хөдөөгийн хөгжлийн сайн дурын ажилтан зэрэг албыг хашиж байлаа.
Таны төлөө эх орн чинь юу хийж чадах вэ гэж асуухаас өмнө та өөрөө эх орныхон төлөө юу хийж чадах вэ гэж асуу. Young Federal Family. Сайн байна уу хүн үзэгчдээ. Та бүхэн манай шинэ студиуд ирээд байна. Манай зочноор өнөөдөр мянганы сорилын сангийн захирал Robert Reid ирээд байна. Good evening.
Good evening, General.
Thank you for coming to this program.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Let's talk about the program, but before that, let us talk a bit about you, where you were born, and how come that you end up with the job.
Sure. I was born in Michigan, in the United States, and grew up there for my early years. Early in life, though, I went to school in Tennessee. I went to military school. And I mention that because military school changed my perspective and also gave me a lot of discipline and organizational skills. I later went to the University of Michigan, and I have a master's degree as well from Thunderbird, the American Graduate School of International Business and Management.
Thunderbird, speaking about, and I saw your email also with Thunderbird, so you keep still going with this network?
Yes. Thunderbird, of course, is the #1 ranked international business school in the world, graduate business school. And really, one of the great things about it is we have a great network. Anywhere you go in the world, you can meet people who have graduated from Thunderbird, and it makes for good contacts, etc. There are 3 of us here in Mongolia. So.
3. There are also Mongolians as well.
There's 1 Mongolian and another American. So.
Okay. You have been also working for Peace Corps, in fact, where you start your career.
Exactly. As soon as I graduated from the University of Michigan, I went into the Peace Corps. So at 21, I became a Peace Corps volunteer in the Dominican Republic, and that really serves as the foundation for the work I've done my whole life in development. That was 37 years ago, and I'm still doing the same kind of work that I started doing as a Peace Corps volunteer, only now at a different level.
You have been working with first Peace Corps, then US Aid, the aid program. And now you are working with MCA, which is also a part of American ODA, Overseas Development Assistance. How is it like working with American aid agency abroad?
That's a good question, and it really depends on where you're working. You know, when you're working in a developing country, it's more satisfying, I think, than working at a headquarters office, and I've done both. Working with Peace Corps, of course, is something where you have the human-to-human exchange. The people-to-people interaction is really the most important thing about the Peace Corps. When you work for USAID or when you work for MCC, the difference is one at a level of which you're working. For MCC, for instance, with $285 million in Mongolia, we're the largest grant donor here. And so we're working with national programs. But I really think that the same kind of work that I did as a Peace Corps volunteer is applicable to the work that I do with MCC. The fact that we're trying to help build capacity at all different kind of levels in Mongolia, I think is one of the most important things. And it's a thing I started off doing as a volunteer.
Why this Millennium Challenge Corporation started up along with another program, which was a government USAID program, and then suddenly this MCA compact idea came out, and how it happened?
Well, in 2004, it was decided by the administration at that time, by the Bush administration, to start an aid agency that would work with countries that were doing the right thing, that were trying to build their own capacity, and that were on the right road, but just needed some assistance. And that's why we started off with a set of criteria that we use to determine which countries are eligible for receiving the compact assistance. And we have those 17 indicators that we look at. And every year, we rank all the countries in the world to determine who's eligible, who's not eligible, etc.
How many countries are eligible so far?
Well, right now we have 20 compacts in countries around the world.
In function?
In functioning. And Mongolia was one of the first countries in 2004 to become eligible for a compact with MCC.
So from 2004, this project had started, and I remember President Ingbayar and President Bush were signing it. Which year?
They signed that in October of 2007 in the White House. And to this day, it's the only compact that was signed by two presidents in the White House.
Oh, okay. So you are in charge of this big project. Let's talk about the project.
Sure.
And I understand the main major strategic goal is poverty alleviation and economic growth. And you have selected particular projects for that. Tell us about this project.
Sure. Just to give a little example, though, of how we decided on these projects, the most important priority for us is country ownership. So when the government of Mongolia became eligible to receive compact funds, we sent messages to the government saying, you can submit proposals to us on the kind of projects you'd like to have. And the next couple of years was about a negotiation of those proposals and which projects. So the projects we have now are really the basis of what the government wanted to do. But not just the government, because there were consultations done throughout the country with the civil society sector, with private sector, etc. So that hopefully our projects now represent what people in Mongolia want to do.
Rather long procedure, and many Mongolians have participated in prioritizing those projects.
Exactly.
So you have 5 projects now.
Correct. We have 3 projects that we started with, and our 4th project was the rail modernization project, which the government asked us to cancel, and which we added 2 more on to make up for that. The first project we have is a property rights project.
Okay.
And it has 2 components.
Okay.
Urban property rights, which really is helping people in Ulaanbaatar, Darhan, and Erdenet to get title to their land, to their hasha plots.
Okay, let's talk on this project for a while. Hernando de Soto, who had visited us last time, in fact, at the Economic Forum, which is another year. This one is going to happen very soon. His team identified at least $7.5 billion property not registered, and could be, if registered, be a big factor of economy alone in Ulaanbaatar city. And what's going on now? Which layer will things go now?
No, it's a good question, and really he pointed out that property rights is the foundation for economic development when he was here last year, and that's absolutely true. Without property rights, you can't have the rest of the economy developing. Right now, we're working with the General Authority for State Registration. We're working with them on improving not only the physical structures where they operate here in the Ulaanbaatar, Darhan, Erdenet, and other regional centers, but also helping them to improve business practices and business systems. That's where we are right now. We're on the business systems and the renovation work.
When things will be done?
This year is when we're going to have the renovations completed, and when we'll
of the system,
of the buildings themselves, the infrastructure, and then we'll be putting in new systems, computers, etc., but improving and shortening this time that it takes to get title as well as business practice.
Is it true that in some countries this property registration system is by private sector?
You know, in most of the countries where I've worked, it's been a government function.
Government function.
But oftentimes supported by a private function.
Is it the case in Mongolia of combination, or?
Well, really, it's still going to remain a government function, but we hope that the consulting that we'll do and the technical assistance will represent that private function as we move forward.
Will it be still that bureaucratic as it is now?
We're certainly hoping not, because really
very much.
Really, one of the things we want to do is to shorten the time it takes to get a title to land.
What kind of difficulties you are facing in that process?
You know, one of the most difficult things we had was pinpointing a building where we were going to operate here in Ulaanbaatar for the main registry building.
How come?
It took a while for the government to decide where that building should be.
But they have already buildings there.
And it was decided finally on which one we would work on to be that central building. It's a building where there had been some property registration done before, but we're going to do registration work to change the way it's configured so that it'll be more appropriate for public. One of the big problems right now in the registration buildings, there's not enough room for the public, and there's so many people coming through every day.
And enough room for officers, probably.
And there's enough room for those sometimes, but really we're doing different configuration.
Okay. We hope that we will have proper accommodation for this registration process, very often to public and more public friendly.
Exactly.
Then issue of system of registration. Now we have sometimes disputes about this particular coordination point. And the neighbors are fighting, and sometimes they are just fist fighting, you know. How do you solve this issue?
Well, it's a good question, and it's one that we worked on as the very first step in our project. We helped the government to install a new GPS system along with a CORS, a continually operating reference system, so that now there's just one readout for that.
Using satellite.
Using the satellite. And so now it's very accurate, and it's also going to be open so that the public can see those online when we finally finish that system.
Okay, everybody can look at any object and they will know to whom it belongs, right?
That's how it's going to be when we're finished with the system.
Wonderful. I wish it is happening very soon.
It will happen before the end of our compact.
Okay, which is?
In 2013.
2013, another two and a half years.
Correct.
Short time, by the way. And you have so many things to complete.
We do.
When we start enjoying that type of registration?
Really, this year we should have some of it underway. We've already done the technical basis, as I mentioned, with the assistance that we gave. Now we're doing the renovation of the buildings, we'll do the software, we'll do the business practices, and at the same time we're doing the selection of which areas that we're going to work on first.
So you talked about property. What kind of property registration?
Well, mostly we're working with people who have Hasha-plots.
Okay. Do we talk about this mineral licenses, etc.?
No, we're not dealing with that. We're dealing with the cities where really the poorest of the poor live.
So first of all, you deal with major 3 cities?
Correct.
And through that we hope that it will help our poor people have their property registered, in particular Hasha.
Yes.
Then make it into the economic turnover.
Exactly. And not only that, but once people have title to property, and once there's some more liquidity in the banks are interested in doing mortgages. And so hopefully people who want to improve their housing
then
will use that title
will it
to
cover
do so.
the value of his property, this registration?
Certainly there's going to be value assessed.
Yeah, because depending on the location, the guy may have, somebody will be able to see the value of particular object or Hasha?
Well, certainly if the market will determine the values of the property
but at the
once
current
people
market
start
value.
Yes.
Wow, this is not only property of registration, it's also this getting into turnover.
Exactly.
Wow. And then, do you know that there is a public initiative to change their hasha into their apartments, or if possible even to certain cooperatives which would own the territory of the hashas? Are you familiar with the initiative?
Yes, I am.
What do you think? Can it be connected?
I think it's going to depend on what the owners want to do.
Yes,
because
certainly.
This will be private property for which people have title. If they want to sell it and join together.
You know, this is what you do would be a big problem for our city authority, because then they will not have a land to speculate or sell under the table.
I don't know about that. I just know that the government really wants this project to go forward.
All right. Now, I'm not asking you to know about that part, but it's in fact a problem because these lands are not registered. The people who has a right to have a big space to manipulate, and sometimes even give two licenses on one object. And as a result, the people are fighting, and we have a lot of evidence for that. Okay, let's talk about the second project.
Well, the second part of our property rights is called a peri-urban rangeland management project, and that's all about helping herder groups to get long-term leases to rangeland in areas near the cities.
Why near the cities?
Well, those areas have become overgrazed because of all the people moving to Ulaanbaatar, Darhan, Erdenet. And so the government asked us to put in place a system, a pilot, which will help to rationalize the use of those rangelands.
So this is if there is a certain distance to cover from the periphery of the city, certain kilometers?
Normally the peri-urban is about 30 kilometers out from the urban area.
Location for agricultural business to be connected with the city?
Correct.
All right. Then will it belong to a particular company, person? How does it work?
The way we've done that, and at the request of the government, is to organize herders into herder groups, anywhere from 3 families to 7 families, who would then join together to get a long-term lease, a 15-year lease.
Of those lands?
Of those lands. And we would help to make improvements of those lands so that they could move into semi-intensive and intensive farming.
We call it farming now.
Correct.
We call this intensified farming.
Correct.
Do we call it? Then we talk about, in case of Ulaanbaatar, we talk about all the central IMAC territories.
Yes.
Okay, then it will change market value of the lands.
Some of the improvements that will be made will be in drilling wells for water, which are necessary for the humans, obviously, the herder groups, as well as their animals, helping with winter shelter materials to make protection during the winter time and protect the animals against zoods like we had last year, and also helping with seeding and things like that to have better feed for the animals.
Will it be zoning within this 30 kilometers, or it will be straight by radius? What is the
It's
division?
going to depend on the boundaries of that herder group as compared to what the boundaries are for surrounding groups.
Okay.
So that there's no taking away of land from anybody else.
So then those herders group, we call it probably a cooperative or something, and those members can they will be able to sell their part or portion, or how does it work?
It's really not meant for sale because it's just a long-term lease. It's meant for exclusive use.
To a group.
To
a group.
Correct.
Okay.
And there's already been about 250 of those leases signed between the herder groups and the local officials.
You talk about leasing of the land.
Correct.
Leasing. It is lease and pay certain amount of money to the provinces, the local province, central IMAC.
The way it's being done is the leases are being signed by the SUM governors and the local officials. And so they're the ones who are signing the lease, and that's where it'll be paid.
Then what will be property which will be built there belong to whom?
Well, certainly, obviously, these are still herder groups, and there's still going to be some nomadic practices that take place during certain seasons. The groups themselves would then own the assets that were invested in. But they'll also be repaying for some of those assets that will go into a fund, a local fund, for which they'll get some benefits later on.
Mm-hmm. So it is sort of integration of into city economy with bigger scale, farming, milk, dairy products. Do you have a particular plan for those cooperatives? Or?
Those are the things that everybody's doing their plans on right now.
Okay.
Each herder group did a business plan. And so they've looked at what would be appropriate for them to do.
Will you support this business plan under the program?
We'll be supporting that through technical assistance.
Through MCA or not?
Through MCA.
Through MCA.
Correct.
And it is already within your budget, this whatever technical assistance comes?
Yes. It's underway right now.
Like, for example, a particular group will do a dairy farm. It will help them to create it?
We will help them, give them the technical assistance so that they can meet the objectives of their business plan, correct.
Well, do you have particular statistics, how many dairy milk will produce, etc.? What will be the replacing of import with that product?
We don't have the overall statistics. We have the data from when we first started, when we did due diligence of what the production was for these groups. What we want to do is to increase production in various things.
Productivity.
Milk is just one of those. But there can be other production increases as well, whatever the plan is that the herder would like to undertake.
Let's talk about next one.
Sure.
Vocational training.
Vocational education and training is a really important project for us here. And we're trying to really change the system and turn it 180 degrees. This is hugely important for the future of Mongolia. This is to help lower educated or sometimes unemployed young people, especially in this country, who need to learn the skills to get employment with the private sector now, which, as you know, is growing at a very rapid pace.
That's something we exactly need in this country.
We started off by supporting new legislation. And after the new legislation was passed by Parliament here, we helped them to set up the National Council for Vocational Education and Training. We then helped them set up the Agency for Vocational Education and Training, which is the secretariat of that council. And the council is 50% private sector. So 50% of the members represent private companies, and the other 50% is government. So we're trying to make sure that the private sector is involved at every level of this change.
In fact, very paradoxical situation in Mongolia. We have own unemployed people, and then we hire drivers from China, builders from China, and our politicians talk a lot, all the time, in particular before election, but not substantial changes unless, now Oyu Tolga is working hard on that, and you guys working hard. What will be in statistical terms in unemployment ratio with the help of the project?
We really want to obviously reduce the rate of unemployment, but more importantly to increase the pay that will be received by these graduates of these institutes.
Classified work.
Exactly. Because these graduates of the TVET institutes will have the skills that the private sector firms are looking for. Right now, that's not the case.
You are working on this skills standardization.
That's correct.
What is this about?
Really, the standardization is all the way from the top to the bottom as far as new curriculum development, so that there's a standard curriculum that's followed, which is designed in conjunction with the private sector firms, so that there's management of the TVET institutes that is standardized, so that there's testing that's standardized, and that the private sector is involved in that, so that when they're involved in the test and they can see that the students pass that test, then they're comfortable giving them employment afterwards. So there's standardization at every single level.
Then that means the person who got this, say, diploma or certificate, certain degrees, whatever, of particular specialization, this person is recognized for being able to do particular jobs.
Correct.
Will this certificate will be recognized by other countries? Is it international standard?
That's what we're working on, is international standards. In fact, some of the curricula that we're working on right now, we're basically adopting from other countries, so we don't have to redesign everything.
Of course.
And those are internationally recognized. But even better than that is the participation with that TVET Institute by a private sector company in that process. Many times they will make agreements as the students in training for 1, 2 years, however long, to employ that person when they're finished. And they're also sponsoring upgrades of the facilities, etc.
Will it cover all vocational technical training in the country?
No. We're concentrating on 30 different sector skills, and basically in the sectors of mining, obviously,
sure,
construction, which is another big one,
yes,
and we're also looking at health and agriculture.
Okay.
We've already inaugurated the first Center of Excellence in Health,
okay,
which is training health technicians here in Ulaanbaatar.
Already?
Already. We inaugurated that last month. And so it's already functioning. It has new equipment. It's been improved tremendously.
Where is this?
It's here as part of the Health Sciences University of Mongolia.
A part of Science University?
Yes.
In terms of this mining?
Then mining, we're going to help set up a Center of Excellence at the Govisomber TVET Institute there.
Okay.
We're doing that in conjunction with the private sector as well.
You say a Center of Excellence.
Center of Excellence means that really it will be recognized as the place that's doing the best job in this industry.
Okay.
To become a Center of Excellence, really what you need to do for Mongolia really is to have a twinning arrangement with a university or a TVET institute in another country.
Oh, that's good.
So that there's a good interchange.
Okay.
And that's what we're working on setting up right
No
now.
invention of new vehicle.
Exactly.
Okay. So that means we will have more professional truck driver, for example?
That's not one of the areas where we're working, but we really hope that the system that is put into place will fix those other ones as well, the other skill sectors too. We're working on 30 that include the major skill sectors. If it's involved in mining, if it's involved in construction,
drilling,
health,
mechanic.
Correct. Those will become much better and better organized.
So have you started, for example, drilling mechanic training?
We're working right now on setting up some of those. We're working on finalizing the curricula first, and that's what we're doing in conjunction with private sector companies.
You know, we have a paradoxical situation in Mongolia. Officially, we have 3.5% of the workforce is looking for actively, they call it actively, job, and they identify them. It's about 30,000+ people only. But in reality, this is 160,000 people. How do you take it? Why is that?
You know, one of the reasons that we're finding from the initial studies that we did is that a lot of students didn't want to go to technical and vocational education and training institutes.
Because
it wasn't viewed as
prestigious.
Exactly. And people were trying to go to universities. And so we're trying to turn that around as well and change people's ideas.
It's a question of prestige, reputation, and salary.
And salary. And the truth is that graduates from the TVET institutes, once they learn a profession well after 5-10 years, they will make much more than a regular graduate from a university in a civil service job.
And I speak about civil service. There is a certain technical job in civil service which requires particular training. Do you address the issue?
You know, in our particular training, one of the things that we're doing, because monitoring and evaluation is a big thing for us, it's one of our core principles to show results. That's one of the areas where we are working.
You know,
to do
about
training.
that, I like it so much, your monitoring and evaluation system. Unlike many other ODA projects, particularly happening in the country, many donor agencies talk a lot, but doing nothing about M&E. I saw your work and I saw your scores. We'll talk about the scores. I liked it very much. Let's go to, because short time, let's go to the fourth project, which is the North-South Road project.
The North-South Road project is one of the new ones that we designed when the rail project was canceled. We have two main focuses on this. The first one is to finish the highway from Choyer to Sanshan.
Yes.
It's 176.4 kilometers of road.
How's it going on now?
We started last year and we got some basic stuff done. This year we're going to start again in the spring.
When it is finished?
It's got to be finished before the end of the compact.
Okay, another 2 years.
Our work plan shows that we should be finished by August of 2013.
2030. That means the remaining part, Sanshan and Zamingud, is it what? Who's
That's part
that?
of an ADB project that should be finished even
by
perhaps
that time?
before ours.
That.
Yeah.
So with that connection, Mongolia finally is connected between our two giant neighbors by asphalt road.
We're finally connected from here all the way to Europe.
Yes, which is good news. And doing that, by the way, you're going. Which standard is this? American standard of this for this road?
The standard of this road should be very good.
Very good.
Yes.
Well, it should be better to be very good because what we do here in Mongolia, we do the same road every year. And how it does happen, our local authorities never answer these questions.
Really, the design of the road was approved by our MCC independent engineers. So,
which nationals are there? Independent engineers?
Our independent engineer is a U.S. firm.
U.S. firm. Okay.
Yes.
Hopefully, we will have that. The standard really that we can compare all other roads, because I know I was living in America. I know you have wonderful road, sign, everything should be international standard. Fantastic. This is a connection of Mongolia with our two neighbors properly.
No, it should be very good. And the second part of that project is to finish or upgrade the road from Ulaanbaatar to Nalak. You know, that road
Yes.
is a big bottleneck many of the times, and it's an old
It's
road.
made by Chinese long time ago,
And so,
but still it survived, by the way, this
Yes.
quality.
but the government has asked us to make it a 4-lane road. And so
Okay.
that's what
Which
we're
is
looking
now
at
2
now,
lane.
which is now 2 lanes. And also to rebuild the Bayanzurk Bridge.
Will it be on the same existing road, or it's a parallel now?
It's going to be parallel to the existing road.
So meanwhile, this road is working, and you will create new one.
Correct.
Fantastic. There it's good. Once upon, last 2 years ago, that bridge got some crack.
Correct. And
It
so the
took-
government has asked us to rebuild that bridge, and so that's part of a tender that is out right now. So
Excellent. And that's another example of good bridge. Fantastic.
definitely.
Then the
Want
energy
to talk
project.
about
Yes.
the health project
Yes.
as well?
Let's talk.
Talk about energy?
Yes, let's do this one then, because it is a particular of importance. I'm going to talk a bit at the end, I think.
Excellent.
Energy and environment project.
Energy and Environment Project was originally termed the Clean Air Project, but really it's more than just that. There are really 3 facets to that project. The first one is to help establish the first commercial wind farm in the country, which will hook into the Ulaanbaatar electric grid. This is in conjunction with Newcomb Corporation and
Yeah, and
others.
Sergei and Salman.
Yes, and
You are working for that particular.
we're doing some of the technical part to hook in
Okay.
the wind farm itself into the grid here,
I see.
along with the government entity that's responsible for that. That's a small portion of our project, but we think important because we hope it'll set the foundation for doing more renewable energy projects in the
energy.
country. And so that's important in that respect, even though it's only 50 megawatt system. The second part is the largest part of our project, and that is about giving subsidies to new energy efficient appliances that can be adopted
Appliances, okay.
by mostly the GEAR residents who are right now using energy inefficient appliances like stoves burning raw coal.
Yeah.
We
So
know
you
that
talk about stoves, or you talk about the fuels now?
we're talking about the appliances themselves and not fuels.
Yeah, appliance. That's better solution rather than the fuel.
And
Because
so
the fuel is expensive. Whatever they produce, it's expensive.
I think it's important as well to have new fuels too.
Then what do you-
However, if you're burning anything in an energy efficient stove, you're going to burn less of it.
How you will be coincided or cooperating or co-designed with this MCA's plan to gasify with liquid within 2 years the whole city?
We're certainly we're trying to collaborate with everyone who's trying to do an inroads into cleaning up the air here. It's a huge problem, and it's going to take a solution that is multifaceted. In other words,
are you familiar with this proposal?
Yes, I am.
Is it workable?
We'll have to see over time. You know, the policies have to be in place also to be able to establish that kind of a huge change.
There's a huge infrastructure as well.
There's huge infrastructure as well. And there's also discussion of increasing the electric grid, a new power plant, etc. That could exacerbate, or that could stop to exacerbate the problem too.
Are you part of, by the way, of this new power plant?
No, we're not. We're not working on the power plant itself.
So the level of appliances of energy users, right?
Exactly, and that's what we're working on right now. And really the third part of that project is public outreach in helping the public understand what the problem is and helping the public to adopt the new technologies.
Well, we understand the problem, where the problem is, everybody here. Those who don't understand, they'll die already, you know, already.
No, that's a good point, Dargo. But adopting the new technologies and how to do that is something that we want to be able to convince people to do it and do it quickly. Because some of these new technologies cost money, which is why we're going to subsidize them. But right now,
here's the problem. If MCS is going to provide with this gas, then you are supply with some appliances which use completely different things. How the family will survive with that?
Well, certainly it's going to take a long time to do any of this.
Okay.
But we hope to do what we're doing before the end of our compact. We would like to replace as many stoves, for instance, that are being used now as possible.
How many stoves do you think?
Well, right now there are about 150,000 households living in Gers.
Yes,
we have enough money in the fund to replace every single one, if we can have the production of those energy-efficient stoves.
Where you will produce it?
The constraint we're seeing right now is the production of those stoves.
In Mongolia?
In Mongolia. Because most of those are produced by small companies who don't have the capital to increase their production. And so we'd like to see more business loans that are at a reasonable rate that would be able to be given to these small companies to be able to increase their production.
Yeah, yet when you have many producers, it will be faster, provided they have all these needed things.
Correct.
Okay. Let's talk about the important project, one of your 5 projects, right? 6 projects, in fact, health project.
Yes.
So tell us, because it has so many components.
It does. It's a non-communicable disease and injury. And really we're helping to implement the government's strategy in this sector. So we're working very closely with the Ministry of Health and the health officials throughout the country. When we were able to expand this project due to the cancellation of the rail project, we increased the percentage of Mongolians who could participate in this from like 60% to almost 100%. So this project will reach the entire country. Really, there are many facets, as you mentioned, to this project, but the most important one is the one you can't see. The most important one is all about changing behavior.
Exactly.
And really it's about helping people to stop smoking, less drinking, better diets, and more exercise.
It will take a long time.
These are projects
that will not be ended certainly before you end.
These are projects that take a long time anywhere. But we hope to be able to set the foundation for moving in the right direction. And the government has promised that they would fund the work when we're finished. That's part of our agreement with the government.
Well, let's see. Let's live that time and leave by that time and leave what they will do. So it's important with the behavior changes. Good. So you really, these projects you talked will help certainly, I think, poverty reduction, and also at the same time will bring certain economic changes in the country.
Definitely. And you know, people say health, for instance, how's that going to bring economic development? But the truth is, because of all the illnesses that people have, and especially men over 50, the worker productivity is low.
Yes.
And so with an improvement in this sector, which is not just through behavior change, but also through equipment that we're providing, new protocols, etc., we're going to increase worker productivity.
This also issue of other economic, in general, wealth, conditions, interesting work, satisfaction in your job. There's quite a range of issues, but these are the basic issues you are going to touch and start, which is a good news for us.
I hope so.
So you are very optimistic you will complete within this 2.5 years all these projects we talk about.
I think we have in plan a plan that's going to be able to do that.
What will happen after 2013, the end?
We finish our project and we have to spend all our money by September of 2013. And what we do after that is to spend time evaluating, of course, as you mentioned before, the results that we want to achieve.
How long that evaluation will go on?
We'll spend 3 months doing the initial evaluation, and then we may have in place some plans to do, really to do evaluations longer term, because some of the projects take longer. So we'll put in place some contracts to do that over a longer period of time, several years.
MCA as such of Mongolia will not exist after that?
Depending on what happens and how the government wants to utilize MCA as the entity that is accountable for our compact, that will depend.
Entity, it is MCA, Mongolia is a Mongolian entity?
Correct. Okay. Established under our bilateral treaty.
Okay, Mongolian, it's a non-government entity?
It's the Millennium Challenge Account Mongolia. It has its own status established by that treaty.
I see.
It represents the government of Mongolia to implement our compact.
And also it is on the board it has a representative of private sector?
Correct.
Civic society?
It's correct.
Okay, how do they work?
That's good. We have...
Bedtime giving or...
No, we have a very active stakeholder committee, which includes civil society and the private sector, who participate in board meetings, and there are 3 members of the board who are voting members from that.
Yeah, I saw on your website quite working board, which is good news. Congratulations for that.
Oh, thank you. It's good.
Before we end our program, I saw wonderful indexes in your website in 3 directions, like just governance and investment in people, etc. And I recommend my audience to watch the program because these indexes are so interesting. In this 3 field, in one particular score, corruption gets worse.
Yes.
So how do you address?
There are 17 indicators that we look at, and we call this our scorecard. And the scorecard, as I mentioned before, is something that MCC does for every country every year. Mongolia had passed that scorecard every year until this last year. And you can see from the scorecard on the web.
Yes.
It's on our website,
yes.
www.mcc.gov.
Yeah, but unfortunately some scores are showing not so good things.
This year...
it don't depend on us. That's what the reality is.
Right. This year the indicator for control of corruption fell to the median.
Okay.
Which means that it's not passing anymore. When a country doesn't pass the control of corruption indicator, the whole scorecard is failing.
Yes.
So it's something that we've already addressed with the government here. And the government is actively working with us to see what kind of improvements can be made to change that.
If it is not changed or constantly goes down, it may endanger the project?
If the government weren't to do anything to address it, it could. But if the government is willing to address it, in which they have told me they are, then they would need to come above the median again to be considered for a second compact.
Do you see any positive changes here?
We're going to have to, we're just starting our discussion. We just delivered this scorecard to the government in November, and I've had further discussions with the cabinet about who are on the board, MCA board, about the scorecard and what needs to be done, and we'll continue to address that. We are, of course, looking for active change, not rhetoric. We're interested, just as we're interested in the results from our projects. We're interested in the results, not rhetoric.
We do also, as ordinary Mongolians, very much interested in that. Well, Би хүн төзөгчдөө өнөөдөр манай програмд манай defacto нэвтрүүлэгт мянганы соёлын сангийн захирал Роберт Reid оролцлоо. Thank you very much for being my guest.
Thank you for having me, Joe.
Good luck for your project. Төлөө эх орн чинь юу хийж чадах вэ гэж асуухаас өмнө та өөрөө эх орныхон төлөө юу хийж чадах вэ гэж асуу. Jan Fedorov